Brian Schottenheimer had some very interesting things to say about Tyler Guyton. We'll tell you what it is next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And on today's show, we're discussing the biggest takeaways from the Cowboys' second OTA session that was available to the media on Thursday. And before we even get to some of the on-field work, Landon, Brian Schottenheimer held a press conference before practice. And one player that he went out of his way to praise was Tyler Guyton, the Cowboys' second-year left tackle. Here's some quotes on Guyton. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Tyler Guyton. He's having a terrific offseason. He's working his butt off. He looks fantastic. He's having a great offseason. I think some of the new things that Clayton Adams and Connor Riley have brought really fit him. He has not missed a day. He's one of the first guys back in the building. He understands how important this year is to him. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he compared his year two, going into his year two offseason to Jalen Tolbert, which is, if you know is high praise. I mean, just as on a work effort level, right? I think he said that he was one of the first guys to come back into the building in the offseason program to start working again. And here's the thing, I think that it's what makes this really noteworthy for all of us is that we have heard basically nothing about Tyler Guyton this whole offseason, except for one cryptic tweet from Duke Merriweather that may have been kind of misconstrued by a lot of folks or misunderstood as to what he was saying. And it kind of got a lot of people in a tizzy a little bit that maybe Tyler Guyton is still struggling. But it sounds like, but from Schottenheimer and then, the man himself, Guyton gave interviews after practice and just, seemed very focused, was very clear about what he had to do this offseason and what he did do this offseason. He focused on maintaining and working on his body. He talked about, changing up his routine and changing up how he was taking care of his diet as well. And just trying to, make sure that he's healthier and that he's getting stronger. He also talked about the influence of seeing the Tyler. I'm sorry, there's too many Tylers now. Now it's getting into the Tyron Smith retirement. Whatever you want to call it, press conference, and just kind of seeing the retrospective of his career and talking to him and the takeaways there that, he needs to get stronger and that how much better that is, how much easier that makes his life if he can get stronger. So it kind of went from, us just having this big unknown at left tackle. It's such an important position, especially with the emphasis put on the offensive line, for us just not know what the deal is with Tyler Guyton, to kind of getting all this flood of kind of positive reinforcement that Tyler, yes, really did have a really great offseason. He looks good. And so far, we haven't done any padded practices yet, but so far it looks like he's on track to be the starter and to be, taking a big step forward.
Yeah, and I even want to back up a little bit further because I think a lot of times the moves that a team makes or doesn't make in the offseason,
I was going to say,
can kind of tell us where they, how they feel about a player. With Tyler Guyton, they didn't sign an offensive tackle in free agency. In fact, they lost a tackle. They lost Chuma Udoga in free agency, and we thought Chuma was at least an adequate swing tackle, right? Like one of the better swing tackles in the league. They didn't go out and sign any swing tackles. We heard some kind of rumblings pre-draft that they really like Josh Simmons, the offensive tackle from Ohio State. Obviously, they didn't draft him at 12. They didn't draft an offensive tackle until I think it was round 6 or round 7, and then they drafted Cornelius out of Oregon, who we're going to talk about in a future episode. That was basically all that we had We saw one picture or one video of him at the Dallas Stars game, and some people thought he looked skinny. And then we saw a picture of him working out where it was clear that he put on a lot of muscle. But one of the things I wanted to talk about really quickly is Tyler Guyton was talking today, I think, in one of the post practice press conference, how he says he's been stretching in his garage for an hour every single day, and that's really helped him improve his flexibility and some of his movement skills. I think that's a great sign for his development moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, he's talked about the flexibility aspect, strength and flexibility were the two things that he kind of continually mentioned and wanting to get better at. And I think the other thing too is that he talked about the diet aspect really helping with some of the joint pains and how, just like how he feels physically,
You say fried food is bad for your joints and your body? It's shocker to me.
My elbows were just thinking about when he started talking about Raising Cane's, and so yeah, I mean, I think, look, I mean, these guys, this is not uncommon. These guys are college aged kids, right? When they come into the NFL or just out of college, right? And they're, guess what? They're not eating the healthiest at 22,
Shocker.
23 years old. So, they get with the professional nutritionist, and Tyler even talked about that, and they do a little bit of work. And now that this is their job a little bit, it becomes a more of a focus, and so I just think, little changes about taking care of his body, hard work and effort, it's going to get him where he needs to go. I think we've always known that he has the skill, the physical skill, the body, the tools, he is the ball of clay that you need to become a very good left tackle. It was always going to be about the effort and then how well he took to that. And it looks like the effort part, at least, is there.
If a breakout season happens for Tyler Guyton, we're crossing our fingers because the Cowboys really need that to happen. I think it looks like this. We point back to, he took his conditioning seriously. He took his flexibility serious. You see that his body. I was looking at a picture today to put on our thumbnail for this YouTube channel, and the difference between last year and this year is shocking. Just how much bigger he is physically. All great news on Tyler Guyton. I had one more note on the offensive line before we move on. Someone asked Brian Schottenheimer about Tyler Booker, and he actually said that they've been rotating all of these guys in: Tyler Booker, Robert Jones, and Cooper Beebe. And that was the one that kind of perked my ears up a little bit. I still think Cooper Beebe is going to be your week 1 starting center. But the fact that they are moving these guys around a little bit, at least is interesting to me that they want to try to figure out who are their best 5 offensive linemen and how do they fit in.
Yeah, I mean, they have to, right? Like, I mean, there's a new offensive line coach, new offensive coordinator. The emphasis is going to be the offensive line. They've got a bunch of really talented guys who can play multiple positions. You kind of have to get a grip on exactly who can play what and how well they play what, so that you can kind of not only assemble the best 5, but assemble the best 7, the best 8, game day guys that are you're going to take on your game day roster, and who is your in-game backup at center? Is it the same guy that's your in-game backup at guard? Can your backup at guard play center? Can your backup at guard play tackle? Can your backup at tackle play guard? These things matter because, like, you need to figure out, like, the best configuration for the starting 5, obviously, but even more than that, you need to figure out who are your long-term solutions if you lose a starter at guard. Who is your in-game solution for if you lose a starter at guard?
Can we do an example really quickly, like Robert Jones versus TJ Bass, your backup guards? Is Robert Jones only a left guard, or is he's somebody that we feel comfortable because of what he showed in OTAs and minicamp that he can play either spot? Maybe he's not. Maybe he's only a backup left guard, which makes him a scratch on game days. But if there's an injury to Tyler Smith where he's going to miss 4 weeks, it's Robert Jones starting, but it's TJ Bass who's the swing guy during the game.
Or Saahdiq Charles. Saahdiq Charles hasn't even played for a year, and he's played both guard and tackle. So you need to get your grip on exactly how these guys kind of play and can fit together. And then once you settle in, you can kind of lean into teaching the techniques of the positions they're going to play.
I just don't want anybody to overreact, because I remember when this happened with Terrence Steele, when I think Jerry Jones said maybe he can play some guard, and we all freaked out. It's just not a big deal. It's May 29th. It's not an issue at all.
This is when they're supposed to be doing this kind of thing.
Yes,
so they're just doing their due diligence here.
All right, let's go on the other side of the ball, Landon, and talk about the starting linebackers for the Cowboys. And there was a notable absence in that group on Thursday. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there has never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I'm taking the Oklahoma City Thunder to win the NBA championship, but go check out the futures lines. Go look at who you think is going to win the finals MVP. It's all there. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. And make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Landon, let's go on the defensive side of things. I want to start with the linebackers because no DeMarvion Overshown, although we got an update today. He's targeting Thanksgiving, that game against the Chiefs. He thinks he's ahead of where he was it a year ago in terms of the ACO?
It sounds like Thanksgiving is what he's targeting. And by the way, did you see him in his interview?
He looks huge.
He looks like an Avenger. Like, what's going on? Like, man, can't wait to see that guy in the field. Yeah. He looks ridiculous.
But your starting linebackers during the Thursday OTA session were Kenneth Murray, the linebacker the Cowboys traded for from the Titans, and then Jack Sanborn, their free agent signing from the Bears, who played with Matt Eberflus. Not in that group, Maris Leofau, the third-round pick from the 2024 draft. He was with Damone Clark in the second unit. How much should we read into that?
I don't know. I think that's something that we're gonna kind of figure out a little bit as this goes, because I do think that one thing we kind of need to calibrate for is how the offense may handle things versus how the defense may handle things. I mean, I think that, this is a young head coach, and I think he is going to obviously put his imprint on both sides of the ball.
Well,
but I
also head coach, a new head coach.
A new head coach. That's fair. God, you're saying that because we were just talking about how close in age he is to me, right? And then that was an indirect shot at me, basically.
It's fine.
Yeah. So I think that he is definitely going to have his say here, but I think as a new head coach, Marcus, I think that he's also going to defer to Eberflus on some of this stuff, right? Like, so if Eberflus is going to be a little bit like, hey, I need my young guys to, come in to kind of sit back and wait and watch how these vets play a little bit, that may be the way he wants to handle it. And that may be the case, especially at linebacker, because of the nature of the position and how it's played. But I do think that is something that we're still having to learn about Eberflus and who he is as a defensive coordinator. So I wouldn't exactly put all my chips down that these are definitely our game one starters quite yet.
I think for Sanborn, it's just he knows the defense probably better than anybody else on the roster, right? Playing with Eberflus over the last couple of years, and it's probably just as simple as that. But we also like Jack Sanborn. Like, we loved that signing when it happened, and it wouldn't shock us if he is one of the starting linebackers in week one. It was a little surprising not to see Maris Leofau with that group, but again, it could just be they're deferring to the veterans here.
Yeah, I mean, again, we have to remember that Leofau isn't going to get the special deference that he did when he was the draft pick for
he's
the
going to play,
administration.
Though. You don't have to worry about that.
Without a doubt. And I think that he might end up taking that starting spot. I just think that, at this point, they're going to try to play the veterans because the veterans are going to know what they're doing a little bit more, you would think. So we'll see how that all plays out. I wouldn't say that battle is quite over yet.
Let's go to the slot corner job because that's been a hot topic issue for a while now. DaRon Bland played a majority of the snaps in the slot. But before we get there, Landon, sounds like Kaiir Elam had another really good day. And again, we've only had a couple OTAs. They're not going at full speed. But there have been multiple beat reporters who have been at practice who have noted that Elam looks very comfortable in this defense. It sounds like this is probably one of your week 1 starting corners. And I'm kind of starting to get optimistic here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably definitely the case. I mean, unless there's an incredible recovery in happening at some point, or there's the case of having Ravel also recover and then also be ready to play. Opposite.
I have a hard time seeing that in week 1.
Yeah, I do too. So I think that Elam is going to be the guy that is likely your week 1 starter at corner. And I think that, look, I think that we kind of everyone, we as the community of the Cowboys fandom kind of automatically assumed what the level of play of this guy was based on all of us witnessing what happened to him in the playoff game against was it Kansas City, right? That they kind of Kansas just City, tore him up a little bit.
Yeah.
Guys have bad games, and guess what? He's not the only decent cornerback in this league who's been tore up by Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. Happened. So yeah. I think again, like it's all a lot about based on the context of how you're viewing these players. And for the Bills, this was their first round pick. And they were ready to move on to do something different. And for the Cowboys, the floor is set a lot lower. We're just asking him to come in and be a slightly better than average corner for a few games while we kind of get healthier at the position. I don't think that's like an outrageous thing to ask for a guy, and it sounds like he's even maybe a little more talented than that. So I think
24. He just turned 24, by the way. So this is not like a 28-year-old who we've seen in the league for a long time. He's played like 1,100 total snaps through 3 seasons.
It feels like we've only kind of like when everyone kind of reacted to the trade the same that it was when we announced the signing of like Ozarike, in the middle of the season last year when we were hurt corners. Like, this is a better sign. This is a trade, first of all, and it's a better deal than that. And he's a better player than that.
He's also a better player than like Andrew Booth, who they traded for right before the season. Like where Andrew Booth, you're just gritting your teeth every time he's in the game. Elam has some of that, but it's not to that level at all.
No, and I also think that with Elam, it's probably more about keeping him in situations that he's comfortable with. Yes. Like if you keep him in cover 1, cover 3, you're not having him chase guys across the field. I think he's going to be able to handle that situation well. So if you can find ways to kind of play to his strengths, that's the level of player he is that you can get good play out of him if you play him to his strengths. But if you ask him to get outside of his comfort zone, you're going to see him struggle. You're going to see him play at a lower level at some of what you've seen. Don't ask him to chase small guys across the field. He's probably not going to be great at that.
Really quickly, Izzy Mokamu got snaps inside at the slot. Zion Childress did. Keemon Hall. We also saw a little bit of Wanye Thomas in the slot, but it sure seems like DaRon Bland is going to be the week 1 starting slot corner.
Yeah, I mean, I think likely what they're going to do is have multiple packages and move guys into based on, matchup situations, that sort of thing. But I would say just like on a normal down and distance 11 personnel, it wouldn't shock me if that's the solution, just because it feels like right now they have, some depth at outside corner. So might as well rely on that and put your best player inside.
Well, I say week 1, but honestly, that it could be one of those situations where DaRon Bland's not lining up in the slot against Philadelphia because their top 2 receivers both play on the outside, right? So maybe that's a game where you do see Israel Mokamu playing in a slot, or you see more of Wanye Thomas. So you're right. I think it's going to be more matchup dependent, but I think they're going to default to DaRon Bland playing in the slot until they figure out maybe who can play in the slot or their outside cornerback situation. All right, let's talk about George Pickens, who had a quiet day on the field, but we noticed some other takeaways from Pickens that we'll get to. We'll do that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show. As training camps get closer and moves are being made, hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's talk about George Pickens. He's been at practice for a couple of weeks now. I know you wanted to talk about him fitting into the offense, so why don't you go first?
Yeah, I mean, it just feels like we've heard a couple different stories about, him being taken under the wing a little bit of CeeDee Lamb. And there was a report today that there was an interview with him and Dak where the two of them sat down next to each other and answered a whole bunch of questions from reporters and kind of were just having a great time. And I just think this stuff's important, right? Like the fact that it seems like he's kind of hit the ground running with integrating with the team a little bit. And obviously Dak is a guy that I'm not shocked to see kind of step up and take George under his wing. But I think you and I both were a little bit surprised to see CeeDee kind of taking that role as well. I mean, not that we would think that I never thought that CeeDee would have animosity or anything like that. But
no.
But I think it's the level of effort that you see and the level of excitement that he has. I think it's maybe tapping into some of the strong, good feelings that he probably has for what. I mean, listen, right or wrong, Cooper kind of dealt Lamb the same way, right? He kind of took him under his wing for better or for worse at times, and was like kind of showing him the ropes a little bit. So I think CeeDee is recognizing that part of being a leader, the lessons that he learned last year, is doing stuff like this and making sure the guys in your position are on the right track. This is a guy that's talented. And again, everyone on this team, including George Pickens, is trying to work to get George Pickens paid. But I also think that this kind of like out of the necessary celebration, the kind of the going the extra mile of showing him that he's wanted and that we want him to succeed. I think it's going to go a long way in making a guy like George Pickens, who I think that may be some of what he was missing in Pittsburgh. Maybe it helps kind of stabilize that situation even further, make him feel more comfortable with the situation in Dallas.
This is the benefit of having veterans on your team who are established and they're good players. Like,
yeah,
I'm comparing like CeeDee Lamb, him growing up in the Cowboys offense and system compared to George Pickens. And maybe this is my thoughts of the George Pickens trade are very well documented. We've talked about him in here. Some of my concerns, but I think there's a chance that this situation is just so much better for him. For example, CeeDee Lamb grew up with Amari Cooper, who had been in the league, 6 years before he even got to play with CeeDee. He was an established Pro Bowl receiver. Michael Gallup. And then when CeeDee started becoming the number one, the quote unquote number one, he had Brandon Cooks working next to him, who at that point was in year 10, year 11. And Brandon Cooks was still a really good player in 2023. Maybe not so much in 2024, but as CeeDee was, stepping into that role,
but a great professional, yes, like a pro's pro who knew how to be a pro and could teach CeeDee how to do that, right?
Absolutely. And I think like Deron Bland benefited from having Stephon Gilmore here during the 2023 season. Compare that to George Pickens, who has played with a lot of different quarterbacks, and none of them very good. Yeah. And then the receiver part of this, where he's never played with someone like CeeDee Lamb. A lot of the best receivers that he played with were the same age as him, who had some major off-field questions as well, like Deontay Johnson, or they were washed-up veterans like Van Jefferson, who were never number one receivers in the NFL. Maybe having someone like CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott is exactly what George Pickens needed to grow up.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think imagine this situation. Like, imagine CeeDee Lamb if he played for the Cowboys and he only ever played with Cooper Rush and Will Grier. And the best wide receivers that he played with is basically Michael Gallup, right? Like imagine no Cooks or Cooper. Like, and that isn't to say that like that makes all of George Pickens's issues disappear, because I don't think that that's necessarily the case. But I think it can speak to some of the frustration that he's been dealing with as a guy who probably wasn't equipped to handle this kind of situation and have it all put on his shoulders, and wasn't quite mature enough to be that guy. I think that this situation just fits who he is as a person right now. And maybe as he gets older, that spectrum of situation will open up a little bit, and he can kind of fly off and grow and be somewhere else if he needs to. Maybe that's the case, or maybe he just likes it here and it's a better situation. Who knows? But I do think that one thing that is going to be kind of an overarching theme of this whole offseason is vibe and feel and energy. Like, how does that affect your ability to play? And can the Cowboys use that to, maybe, twist the knobs and increase the power a little bit?
I just look at like some of the best receivers in the league. Like Justin Jefferson started his career with Adam Thielen. Jamar Chase had a veteran Tyler Boyd. Puka Nacua had Cooper Kupp. Like a lot of these top end receivers were, they played with veterans that could show him how it's done. That doesn't mean that they were better than the young guys, but I don't think George Pickens has had that. And now he does with CeeDee Lamb, and he's got a quarterback that's really well respected in Dak Prescott. I'm not saying it's going to work out, but if it ever does, this is the situation for George Pickens. That's all.
And this is how it would look. So we'll see.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you right back here on Monday.